going to start with a very simple question. Is it a boy or a girl? It's the first question that everybody's asked. Well, you're not asked, but if somebody else was asked, is it a boy or a girl? Even before you're born, they want to know, is it a boy or a girl? Why? Why do we need to know? What on earth does that piece of information, how does it help us in any way, shape or form? It can help me to stereotype your life and the way you grow up, but that's pretty much it. It's not going to affect anything else. I still get asked the question. Kids ask me, are you a man or a woman? I always say no. So then they come up with, so do you go to bed with men or women? And telling them my age, there's so little choice. I hardly like to live in one of these. And so the next question is, have you got it cut off? It's cut it off. So they peel back the skin, cut the bit out in the middle, turn it inside out, probably go, I never get 4 questions. I've had the police knock on the door once saying, we've had a complaint, you've been speaking to children in a sexually explicit. I said, oh, come on. They asked a question and I gave them a fairly detailed, I said, oh, for God's sake. I said, well, nobody else is telling. And that's the problem, nobody is telling. No, I don't need to go into detailed surgery and operation. I actually need them to know that most trans people don't have surgery. Most trans people don't go through that whole process. And that's the problem we've got, is that the media is only interested in this magical transformation of taking a male body and making it female, a female body and making it male. But actually, most trans people don't change their gender. Some do. For some, it's such a, gender dysphoria is such a horrible condition that they would rather die than not have that. No, that's fine. Do it. It's not harming anybody else. They go through an awful lot of crap. I've seen people, and sometimes it does lead to all sorts of conditions where people do end up in wheelchairs, they end up with all sorts of stuff. So I think there needs to be a lot better thinking around options rather than pushing people down one or the other. And I can understand some of the reaction that's currently going on against trans people because there isn't an option, because that middle ground, that place where no one goes, is still empty. When I was 6 years old, my parents took me to see a child psychiatrist. It wasn't their idea. The school had noticed that I didn't seem to get on with kids of my own age. Now, the psychiatrist assessed me, checked me out, and said, oh, no, we think that he is about 2 years ahead of his age mentally. Now, this is 1957, so they weren't checking for gender non-conformity because, well, they weren't checking to see if I was transgender because the term transgender hadn't actually been invented at that time. Transgender wasn't an available condition. They were aware of transsexuality, they were aware of homosexuality. They put people in prison for that because it was completely illegal. And people who were transgender, well, they stuck probes in their head and did electroconvulsive therapy to try and stop it. We might fight for it, we might try and do it. I did all sorts of therapies and things to try and get rid of it, trying to learn about it and experience it because I was so terrified about what might happen. But here's the problem. They put me down a year. They weren't looking for that. And actually the weird thing is, you see, if they had been thinking about gender, they'd have realised that actually girls are about 2 years ahead of boys anyway at that age. Boys seem to catch up, or girls slow down on what it is around about puberty. So there is a difference between boys and girls that they would have assessed. So what they were seeing was evidence of gender that I was not, fully male. And it wasn't children I didn't get on with very well, because the school was so split, boys' entrance, girls' entrance. I mean, it was all divided up. What they were seeing was I didn't get on with boys. Actually, I got on with girls very well, but the problem is that we segregate all the time, keep the girls in this. Boys line up here, girls line up here. Everything is so separated, and we're so segregated into those genders from a young age. We don't get a chance to explore and find out who we are. Fortunately, I was in a family of 4, 2 boys, 2 girls, very close together. There's only 5 years between us, so I actually grew up with a quite balanced gender outlook, except the sense of wanting to be a girl. No one can ever know. Can't tell my mum, can't tell my dad, can't tell the teachers. Definitely can't tell my brother and my sisters. God, that would have been terrifying. So it stayed a secret. I finally was about to get married. I told my partner, and I I just kept it. I cross-dressed a lot. I went to cross-dressing clubs, and this is me by the age of 50. I was the financial services. I was the technology guru to the financial services industry. I learned about technology. I worked in technology quite a lot, mostly from a marketing point of view. I wrote articles in most of the financial press. The company's closing down. I was a consultant for them, and there was a big fancy dress party at the end of the year. I thought, I know. And I always used to get a bit outrageous when I went to those, never fully, because I thought, I'm going to go full on drag this time and let people. And I told a few people, and I was beginning to get more confident. Oh, wow, are you going to do that? Yeah, so I turned up at the party, just slightly differently dressed. And it actually went down quite well. One of the directors had come out as being gay, and there were a few of them. So the company was actually quite, comfortable. I knew we were moving on, and within 6 months I didn't have any work. Fear. That's the problem. Fear is affecting everything they do. If they book me and it goes wrong, as a trans woman, oh my God, why did you book the tranny? What is our greatest fear, do you think? What's the greatest fear that we have in life as human beings?
Humiliated.
Shame. Shame. So number one fear. They're absolutely brilliant, but it's really important to understand because this is what we're really all talking about now. It's the feelings of shame, the feelings of humiliation that come from being different, from being treated different, and feeling that you're not included, that you don't belong within that community. That's what we're trying to tackle. That's what today's all about, is tackling this issue of shame. So let's have a look at some stats. 60% of trans people experience hate crime, but 97% didn't report it. That's the worst figure. But we'll go. 35% attempt suicide. 50% of young trans people attempt suicide. But the figure that everybody misses is that if you are not supported by your family, if you're not supported by your school, and you are trans, you're 4 times more likely to attempt suicide, self-harm, get involved in drugs, or get involved in sex work. 40% too afraid to transition, way underestimated. 2% of the people who had the courage to answer the survey, most people wouldn't have answered the survey. More trans boys, female to male, are bullied than trans girls. I couldn't understand that at the start, and then I began to realise we hide. We don't let anybody know. But unfortunately, because being a tomboy seems to be a bit cool, but unfortunately it doesn't stop the bullying. And girls can be really bad at bullying, particularly now with social media. 33% had to move because they're trans. I moved up to Hull from South. I lived in the South most of my life. Most experienced homelessness, I was about 18 months living with friends. My fault, because of messed up my tax, but the reality is that it happens. Because also, I suddenly found myself a long period of time with no income coming in, trying to find ways. And then I went to university. I thought, well, if people want to book because I'm trans, I went to university, a master's degree in gender, become an expert in this field, and thought, right. And I just happened to coincide with the Equality Act coming out, and I came out of university with my master's degree, and every single council would say, oh, we need to get trannies on our board. So suddenly I was on the medical board. That was really great. Nobody wanted to pay me for it, but it was all voluntary. But there we go, I had the experience over there. So here we go, this is what really triggered it all. This was the big tipping point, Caitlyn Jenner coming out. There were a number of factors around Caitlyn Jenner. She's an A-list celebrity. Not just that, but what she was before. Bruce Jenner, decathlon gold medal. We're not just talking about macho, we're talking about the height, the pinnacle of masculinity. This is somebody who is the most masculinely fit guy in the world. And not only that, he's got a whole bunch of daughters who are now superstars in the Kardashians. So, this is the world now. Suddenly we've got a world full of trans celebrities, not for anything other than that they're trans. And but also we've got lots and lots of people in the movies as well. And so we've got trans women who are actually playing the part of trans women. We've got some men and some women playing the part of women. Lots of issues now going on. trans people say, oh, if it's a trans character, it should be played by a trans character. It's the same as blacking up if you're going to be, oh God, some battles that we've had on that. Now, but also we've got trans men. Who would have thought that all of these were born women? These are hot guys, aren't they? You know, Emmerdale, and this is Jake Gaff, who's done quite a few films and been in a few movies, Colette and a few others. So then you've got this. It all probably started with Conchita Wurst, was the one who really shocked the world. Incredible voice, beautiful figure, and the beard. Winning the, not the first trans person, of course, or gay person to win the Eurovision. That was Donna from years ago. So here we've got this people coming out and saying, I'm neither male or female. And my partner's now come out this. Now, I think a lot of people who are saying I'm non-binary are in a position where, if they could, they probably might want to transition completely. But they've got children, family, they've got jobs, they've got all these things which are likely to be affected. I left it for years and years because I thought once I transition, it'll be the end of it. I transitioned because I thought, oh, maybe things have changed and the laws changed. But you can change laws very easily. Changing attitudes, much more difficult. So, sex or gender? So quick little discussion here. Two words we use all the time. Everybody argues about them and uses them interchangeably. Are they interchangeable? Okay. So,
We'll find out.
how many of you suddenly realised that was a much tougher question than I thought it was going to be? And that's the problem. Get two simple little words like that, you've never really thought about their meaning. When I did my master's degree, this was a 20-credit module. What's the difference between sex and gender? It took me a year and there was no answer. That's the problem. Again, biology, psychology is what people come up with, but there is an elephant in the room. And the problem is, you see, that we overlook the fact that more than anything else, sex primarily means sex is about bonking, it's about shagging, it's about having it all. Yeah, that's what we think about when we think about sex. You don't go and have gender with your partner. And this is the problem. You can have sex with same-sex partners, with opposite-sex partners, with opposite-sex partners and same-sex partners at the same time. You can do it in groups, you can do it on your own, you can do it on a computer, it's called cybersex. You can do it with animals, it's called bestiality, and it is illegal. But the very first piece of legislation which made homosexuality, and it didn't actually address homosexuality, it was anal sex in particular. Now, if I say to you the word homosexual, take the word sex and put it in, what does homosexual mean? What do you think about when you think about the word homosexual?
Gay.
Gay what?
Same sex.
Same sex?
Yeah.
And anything about them? What's
Gay male, gay male.
But we tend to think homosexual, and immediately the mind starts to travel towards, oh, gay men having sex. And if we think about gay men having sex, immediately everything, oh, well, anal sex. Yeah. Buckery, sodomy, as it's been described there. Did you know that there are more heterosexual couples engaged in anal sex than there are gay men? A lot of gay men do not like it, don't do it. That's just a sexual practice. When the Buggery Act came out in 1533, Henry VIII brought it out, it was with man, woman or beast. It wasn't about homosexuality, it was about anal sex. That's been the obsession that people have had about that they didn't want. A lot of people engage in all sorts of sexual activities. The problem is that we say transsexual. What do we think about when we say transsexual? What comes to mind?
Transition from one to the other.
Physically, is it? It's about having your body change from male to female. And that's actually what it meant. When the term was first used by Harry Benjamin in the 60s, it was about men or women going through that surgery of gender confirmation, gender reassignment, gender, whatever you want to call it. It was about having surgery. Not all trans people have surgery. In fact, most don't. Now, yes, sex is about the body, it's about reproductive systems, it's about biology. It's about chromosomes, having XXXY chromosomes, it's about hormones. But of course, we all have estrogen and testosterone. Some women have more than others. And we've got casters going through that huge battle at the moment for the right to still be treated as a woman in athletics just because her body produces more testosterone than average. Most people say, well, it's unfair. I'm sorry, if you're a 6'6" boxer fighting against somebody who's 5'5", you have an unfair advantage. And nobody's going to say, oh, well, you can't do that. It's unfair. It's just, sport is about people with unfair advantages. Isn't it? And somebody is not everybody can become a world champion. The people who become champions are the people who have an unfair advantage in their body, whatever it is. So, anyway, this also affects obviously trans women. If trans woman transitions, oh, she's got testosterone, oh, you used to be a man, oh, that's unfair. Well, we're trying to find rules that say, okay, fine, if you've done certain things, you can compete. All of these things. Now, some people are intersex, that means that somewhere their body isn't male or female. They're already in the land of neither male nor female. And what we've been doing for 100 years is to try and surgically fit them back in to the binary. We have to assign sex and say, yeah, they've got to be male, they've got to be female, they've got to be one or the other. I have to put it on the form. And one consultant said, well, it's much easier to dig a hole and build a pole. I can't believe consultant. So that's what happened. Most intersex children were reassigned to female and brought up as female.
Yeah, I've got recently a family friend of ours exactly that, and they had to pick, and it was just like, oh, what if they grow up and decide actually no, I actually feel more male rather than female? I think they'd go with female.
Just let the child make the decision for itself when it gets older.
So is it in Germany they've introduced the third option, unclassified or something?
Yep, third gender.
Yeah, to allow for that choice.
And you have the same in Thailand, the same in Taiwan, I think it's just that. New York, you can have X on your birth certificate if you're born in New York. There are lots of places around the world where we've already now have the ability to say, I'm either male or female. And it's not just about the physical body. Hirschfeld, the sort of grandfather of all trans studies from the 1920s, 100 years ago, right back then, 100 years ago, he said, I think this is a transgender, sorry, words gone. This is a condition of intersex. It's just, you can't see it because it's some part of the brain. And we've looked at the brain, we've tried to slice them up and try and dissect them and try and see, is there just two male and female brains? Can we put MRI scans and see? There appear to be some differences, but then there are lots of women who have male performances, there are lots of, and the things that we're looking at are like a little tiny bit inside the hypothalamus, which is twice as big as in men as it is in women. But it's the size of a pinhead in men. We're not talking about big chunks of difference, we're talking about suddenly finding the brain seems to be active in different ways between men and women, but it's not all men, it's not all women. So we don't really know what's going on. And you can't really look, can you? This is the problem. And if you look after someone's dead and you slice it up, well, did that happen during their life? Was that something that happened as a result of their lifestyle, the drugs they took, the hormones? We can't, it's so hard to tell. Why don't we just say, look, it's a non-gender area, just all get into it. And here's the problem with gender, it's a social construction. It's all of the rules that we impose from the moment you're born that says about language, culture, education, roles, the kind of jobs you're going to evolve into, clothing, appearance, behaviour, expectations for what you'll do, your whole place in society determined by whether you were born male or female. In some cultures that's extreme, in others it's less so. We're still, I think, quite extreme in terms of what we're doing. If anybody would like copies of these slides, by the way, you can. And there's a whole bunch of discussion things at the end, which we're not going to get to because I underestimated that. We'll try. See how we go. Anyway, 500,000 trans people in the UK. 500,000. About 30,000 have had any form of medical treatment. And that includes counselling. Yeah. It may be more, we just don't know, because a lot of it isn't being monitored. We don't know what the figures are. People are going abroad to get treatment, they're going into Thailand, they're going to Germany, they're going to Holland, they're going to all sorts of places, because there's sometimes better treatment. Thailand does the best surgeons. So let's have a look at the gender-bread person. This is a concept which came out back in the 80s, before the internet. Somebody then picked it up and thought, oh, like that, and modified it and played around with it and issued it. And lots of people give feedback, and so he then started to change it. The problem was he was a white Christian cisgendered male. Cisgender? Anybody know what cisgender is? Just so we could. Okay, if I'm transgender and you're not transgender, what are you?
Cisgender.
Yes. Good that you didn't say normal. Because that's the inclination, isn't it? We have devised the term cisgender. This is our gift from the trans community to you, the cisgender community. Some people don't like that at all, but the Oxford Dictionary said it has come into language so fast. It is the fastest they have ever seen a word become adopted within language. And it's particularly because the universities accepted it in most of the university papers and theses and such like. It's just there. So you're cisgender, and that, it's just helpful. So we can get away from the idea of normal. There is no normal. So, gender identity, this is this sense of who I am inside my brain. I don't know why it's there. I've got lots of stuff. I've read huge amounts on this. I did a master's degree trying to look at why men and women different, what's going on. You read rubbish like John Gray's Mars and Venus, and I have a very close friend, Alan Pease, has written a few books with his wife, Barbara, on this. Alan does it just in order to make jokes, but he's Australian, so he usually offends people. But anyways, so the whole thing is that it's gender identity, it's sense of who we are. And what I found is that people don't want that to change. They're just, they're very happy with who they are. I ask people questions, do you want me to change the world? Change the world so nobody cares? Can change you? Most people are very comfortable saying, no, I'm comfortable with the woman. I want my body changed. I want the world to not care. I don't actually want to be a man. And that was the feedback from 250 people when I did my research. So we know that this is fixed. This is who you are. And you can try all sorts of things to change it. Same with being gay. If you're gay, you're gay. It ain't going to change. You can suppress it. You can try to push it down. I did for 50 years. It never goes away. You can push it into the background. You can create a world in which it's very difficult to actually cross-dress, very difficult to engage with, but it will not go away. So, attraction isn't just about physical attraction. It's also about romantic attraction. It's the bromance, the sister love. There's all sorts of things. We get on with some people far better than others. And some of them we actually like to have sex with. But it's not that many, is it? When you think about the world of how many people you really want to have sex, it's a very, very small number of people. And for most of us, when we found the one, that's it. Nobody else. And I thought it was always going to be women, and it wasn't. So, sex, we've looked at that. Gender expression, how do we present it? So let's just have a look at gender expression in a little bit more detail. So here's the idea that our gender is made up, and who we are is made up of bits of masculinity and femininity. And what we have is these two sliding scales. And we have a certain proportion of each. So for example, let's just take hypermasculine. This is the macho kids in the gym, they're working out. The person they love more than anybody else in the world is staring back at them. It's a narcissistic position, and they love who they are, and they work out, and they spend most of the time doing that. Okay? And it's very difficult to have a relationship with someone like this who actually is lovely. So, and guys, you mean, just in case you don't need to know, women like men with a little bit of gay. Just so you know. So soften it a bit. Because everybody likes that little bit of, it's not hard. We want people to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more, connected. You've got people who are androgynous in the middle. It's interesting, it mostly tends to be talked about as women who express masculinity. I would like to see a lot more men saying, okay, cool, I quite like wearing dresses and skirts and robes, but why shouldn't they? Polynesian men wear them. I went to see a friend of mine years ago, but just happened to have to deliver something to him. He didn't know I was coming up, and when he arrived, he himself was from, I think it was Mauritius, and he had this really lovely robe on. I said, look, I have to explain. Oh God, I wasn't expecting you. God, this is why not. I said, hey, I'm cool with this. I think it's actually really lovely. And he was really, really panicking because he thought that I would now see him somehow as some sort of deviant. Well, why can't we just be a lot more open and comfortable? Look at the things that people wear around the world. I love those African costumes, don't you? Male and female ones, fabulous. Why can't we wear more of that? Bit of colour around. So, hyper-femininity, it's the same thing, isn't it? They love themselves. It's all makeup and glitz and glamour and you know, it's not a very easy person to get on with. So we all want people to be a little bit more in the middle. So the thing is that this is what we're made up with. Our gender expression is made up of different extents to which you express yourself. And you can be more feminine or less feminine. I happen to be a little bit more feminine, so I express myself and I describe myself as trans feminine. Anyway, biological sex. So we think we're all male, but actually we're not. You know, I see men who are very feminine featured and women who are quite masculine featured. We've all got various different variations, and these are changeable. You can move these around. We can have surgery and all sorts of things to modify and change our body to make it more comfortable. So our physical biological sex isn't something that's fixed. It's mutable. We can change it, we can modify it with drugs and hormones. So then we've got gender identity. Now, so I thought I was definitely all maleness, and then slowly that sense of I really should have been a woman starts to come along, and I have to learn to live with these two conflicting things, and then you don't ever see that. That's what's going on in my head. So it's a question of then, do I change that to express it and make myself so how I feel outside is better? And because then we get to sexual attraction, and this was interesting because I thought I was always attracted to women. In fact, I was terrified about the idea. And then I remember one day I was working in Regent Street, and this young gay guy started with us. It was like 1974 or 5, I think. And he's so camp and really beautiful. And he walked through the door, and my body went to shock. I thought, oh, God! And I didn't dare speak to him, ever. Okay, I literally, I just couldn't go near him. And then suddenly somebody said, oh, you know, Clive, I think his name was. I said, yeah, really fancies you. I thought, oh, shit. I was in a relationship, how do you do? And all of a sudden, everything is saying, you know, what you think about yourself may not be what is true. And then I saw him one day cross just as well. There we go. Anyway, so relationship attraction, I think we actually have a lot more flexibility around who we're attracted to. And it doesn't have to be about sex. Sometimes it can just be about that warmth and comfort, the hugs, and we get so stuck in it all having to be about sex when actually it's not. It's this. So I want to talk briefly about social identity. There's a whole, you can do master's degrees on this. I used to do a little bit more technical, but it's this sense of self based upon the groups that we're part of. And so social identity is something that's affecting us all the time, but we're not really aware of it because nobody's labelled it. And this is the problem. We're just aware of it. One of the things I discovered when I changed gender, I had no idea how big a difference that was going to make to my life. Because I was swapping backwards and forwards, I'd gone to a dinner and somebody said to me, I said, oh, really? And my friend came and said, Rikki, you couldn't do that. You're dressed as a man right now, and if you do that, that's very feminine. And people are, and it was like, because men don't do that. Men don't, if you ask a man to look at his nails, yeah, right. And then there was one more going, okay. So just little things about the way in which we do things differently. It's just, so let's have a look at this, because I want to really highlight something here. We've talked about inclusion today, and this is a big part about inclusion. But I want to encourage you to start thinking about the next step. And this is something that's come from the HR director at LinkedIn. And she's saying it's actually about belonging. It's that sense that when I come to work, this is my family. I mean, you're the NHS. I mean, you work stupid hours, don't you? Okay. As an organisation, you probably have the longest working hours that anybody has. Maybe not in the finance department, but certainly, the clinical staff work some ridiculously silly hours. And you, as a consequence, whatever it is when you're working, I mean, you don't get an awful lot of time if you're in that kind of work to have too much social life, do you? And you're socialising a lot around with people that you work with. So you want this to be a bit like family, isn't it? So I need to come to work and feel that it's okay. So imagine what it was like for gay men back in the sort of 80s coming to work and people say, oh, what do you do on the weekend? I was some friends, can't say I went to Pride, because that would have really, oh gosh. First time I went to a conference dressed as a woman, I went to someone speaking to someone and I said, do I know you? I said, do you remember Rikki Arundel? That's my dead name. I said, oh yeah, are you his wife? I said, no, it's me. Oh, really? Step back. Someone, oh, amazing! Give me a hug. Others step back. Never spoke to me. Very, very strange experiencing that sense of people saying, okay, fine, you don't belong anymore. Imagine what it's like if you go somewhere and you meet someone and you don't, or somebody comes in they have to deal with, and you just don't like them. Slightly aggressive. You met them, people you just don't like. How do you think you react to them?
Standoffish.
A little bit standoffish? Deal with them a bit quickly, release them as quickly as possible. Just wait a minute, I'll be with you. Yeah, it's just, how do you think they feel? How have you felt when someone's done it to you?
Not valued.
Not valued?
Or heard or...
If you are obviously different, I've had this all the time. I went to an exhibition stand, go and talk to somebody, and this kid starts answering a question, all of a sudden he just burst out laughing and ran off. And his boss is down and said, oh, I'm really, really sorry, I'm so sorry. He just couldn't handle it, could not deal with the fact that I was completely different. Okay, and I've seen this, I've seen it particularly when some Muslim women have come up and they're wearing, full burqa. Not even then. Back then, and it's more common now, but sort of 20 years ago, there were very few women in business areas wearing hijabs. So, and somebody would, oh gosh, what's that? I've known people after 9/11 refused to get on planes because there was somebody on there who looked as if they were Muslim. So that whole Islamophobia thing doesn't make you feel comfortable, does it? It makes you feel really... and it's gender, family, status. I mean, you come to Hull, and if you're not wearing a striped t-shirt, you're in trouble if you want to go to a football match. You need to be supporting a Tigers, or you're one of them. And this is what we do. It's them and us. The football team that we don't support. The school, oh God, you're the other school. I do a lot of work in schools. The problems they have when they try and merge two schools together. Because for years they've been fighting each other on the green. So you've got this constantly happening as a result of there. And this is what we have to overcome, because it's there. And we all are biased. I don't know whether you've had unconscious bias training, but so we all have biases. We can't survive without them. I used to be in marketing. My sole job as a marketeer was to make you biased towards my products. Okay, that's all I did, was to make you want to go beans, means, bias. Yeah, there are people trying to bias you. What do you think it is? Yeah, all the bloody politicians constantly trying to bias you in favour of them. And we have all these symbols and identity. We have chants, we have songs, beams, graphics, logos, dress code, tattoos, all of these things which you do. Look at you saw it at Pride. It was a sea of rainbows. Everybody's didn't see a rainbow there. Lots of rainbows, lots of flags, all the icons that go with the gay community. And they have them. And every community has it. Football teams have it. We create them for it. As soon as you're going to have an event, you put let's have a badge, let's do this, the colour code. And so immediately we brand the event to make it a special event that you've come to, and you've got all the stuff to go with it. Now, all the time this is happening, and we've got to be very careful that we make this inclusive. Otherwise everybody will feel that they don't belong. And this is what then happens. We then start to discriminate against the out-groups. I was doing some work with some refugees who some years ago who'd come from Rwanda, and they were telling me that I saw a documentary about it. I think it's the Tutsi, I can't remember which one, I think it was the Tutsi got called cockroaches. So what they did was to dehumanize the people. They're cockroaches. What do you do with cockroaches? You stamp on them, you kill them, you get rid of them, and that's basically creating the same kind of attitude. So calling people fags, calling people various different names, all of that is all about dehumanizing the other so that we can actually then erase them without fear that we're actually upsetting God or whatever. And it leads to prejudice, it leads to biases built in it. So this is something I think that everybody needs. We need to start understanding the impact of social identity on us, because we've got strong social identity. It's happened to us all our lives. It continues to happen, and we have to just check the biases that are being caused by this, and say, right, what's happening? And most of the problem is education. Most of the hate crime against trans people and against on the streets is young people. Why? Because nobody will talk about it in the schools, and then their parents get up and say, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about this," so the kids think actually. So can you see we're actually aggravating the whole process and the whole problem? Quickly on the Equality Act, I've only put those up, and I'm not going to go through this because I'm sure you've had loads of Equality Act training. Just to remind you, these are the protected characteristics. The Equality Act fundamentally changed equality law. Prior to the Equality Act, there were separate rules for if you were Jewish, separate rules if you were gay, separate rules if you were disabled. If you were a black disabled lesbian woman, and you got discriminated against, you had a problem. Did you go to the Disability Rights Commission? Do you go to the Rates Relations Board? Do you go to the, I can't remember what they call the gender one? And if you were lesbians, you weren't even covered anyway, protected anyway. So all of those things, and each one had separate rules, separate commissions, separate court case, so you had to decide which one you were discriminated on, which made it almost impossible to get a case, because the moment you picked one, they'd say, oh no, it wasn't that. And they could always admit to the other one, and it was a mess. Now, everybody has protected characteristics. Includes everybody. So the law itself became inclusive. So we're all part of that. But the thing that people are not grasping is harassment law. And this is the one that really is the toughest piece of legislation anywhere. And if people understood it, I think we'd have an awful lot more court cases. But I think you need to understand it. Harassment occurs when somebody engages in unwanted behaviour which is related to a relevant protected characteristic and which has the purpose or effect of violating a person's dignity, or, and this is the hard one, creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating or offensive environment for that person. Just having a conversation with negative connotations related to a protected characteristic might affect anyone. You do not know in your group whether the people you're talking to have gay children, gay parents, are gay themselves but in the closet, or trans, have good friends who are Muslim or Hindu, or you don't know who people know. You don't know who people are affected by. My partner was at college doing an animal management course. Group of very homophobic girls started having a go because there's a gay lecturer. I got a phone call from my partner saying, don't pick me up, I don't want to know that I'm with you. She left the course within 3 weeks because it was just too uncomfortable to be there. And I come across so many people who went to college and had to leave because these things were happening. And people were making comments, and people didn't know that they were trans, but the comments were making them feel really uncomfortable. So all the time you've got to think, if you're having any conversation, if you're saying something which affects or impacts or is a negative way of talking about any form of protected characteristic, you are almost certainly going to be harassing someone, even if they don't say anything. Mispronouncing is the most common way that people harass me, and using the wrong pronouns, using Mr. instead of Miss. On the phone I can understand it because they can't get my voice, but dead naming, and there's people doing it online now, finding out someone's name from before and pushing, media do it all the time. Caitlyn Jenner, who used to be Bruce Jenner, and just constantly remind everybody this person has changed their gender. Why? Who cares? So, IPOS survey, 3 out of 5 people purposely misgender trans people. And we've got people going on being interviewed on someone's talking about Jazz Jennings. She has been living as a girl since the age of 3, and they say he all the time on this, standing outside Stonewall with a megaphone, chanting away. I don't understand it. I just tend to ignore them. A lot of times you'll find at conferences now and begin to give people badges saying, what are your pronouns? What do you prefer? She or he? Or what if you're neither male nor female? What if you're in that middle ground? Well, there are some options. Give you a card, pick one. Now here's the problem, you see, you're not going to get, these are all different ones that people have tried to get introduced. And it hasn't worked. You're not going to massively change the English language that way. It's really hard. We've done it very quickly with cis, but you're not going to get it here. So most people, when they're third non-binary, are picking using plural. But we already have established a practice of doing this when we're writing. So now we can do it when we're here. So hello, my pronouns are they, them, theirs. It's taken me a while. Think about the person as being two people in one. So they have the soul of man and woman in one body, so think of they are 2 people. So just think of them as there, or start calling everybody them, they, theirs for a while. Just to, why? Why not? It's just a neutral pronoun. Chinese, there is only one. In writing it's different, but in Ta is he or she or them or there. We just keep going. And some people just say, oh, I don't care. So, if you go to Facebook now and it asks you what's your gender, you can put male or female or other. Once you put other and start typing, it will then start to produce your list. It took me ages to get this list. I had to go through and get them all. Okay, so there we go. And if you can't find one there are more. So you go through there and pick one of those, and if they've done well, there's more still. And I was looking through it, I thought, God, well, they still haven't got drag queens up there. And they haven't got female impersonators and she-males and Gatoy and Ladyboy, Hydra, Travesty, Two Spirits, they missed out, Albanian Sworn Virgins, they're not on the list. Moons, Fafafidi, I can't pronounce much of these. These are, the Philippines, Africa, and various different places. Cultures have had 3, 4, 5 genders for hundreds of years. Why don't we just stick with it? There's lots of possibilities, lots of variations. It can be a little bit more complicated. So how many genders are there? How many people are there? Pick your own gender. Can you see if you move all those sliders around, you end up with your particular gender, which just happens to be your particular style, your way of presenting yourself. It doesn't have to fit to any particular term. We can simply be ourselves, and that's what we've got to encourage people to do. There's a brilliant book written in the 1960s. In it, Powell said, I'm afraid to tell you who I am, because if I tell you who I am and you don't like who I am, that's all I have. But I actually would rather see who you are. I found when I came out, I was worried that people would reject me, and they did. But the incredible thing is that for every one person who accepts me for who I am, there may be 1,000 who don't. Well, actually, I'll go for the one that accepts me. Because if I don't show who I am, then nobody accepts who I am. They're all accepting a mask of who I think they want me to be. Well, actually, I'd rather them just accept me for the way I am, and that's it. Gender is about your self-expression. It's about who you are. A couple of quick things just to remind you, because I know we're on time now. Think about this within your organisation. Clear equalities policy, fairly enforced. People need to see, if you have an equalities policy, that it is enforced and it is fair. And you'll only get that from feedback, by doing it and getting to know what other people say. Mandatory awareness and unconscious bias training. If people don't get to understand and know difference, then they're going to be scared of difference. That's just the nature of human beings. It's actually, it was a survival mechanism. You think back to the times when we lived in small tribes, if you didn't recognize the other, you could die. So but now we're living in a slightly different world where we're beginning to accept the other, so we need to understand them. Encourage and fund LGBT support. If it's creating an LGBT alliance, LGBT support group within your organisation. Make health and other benefits LGBT inclusive. That's the big. This was influenced by some stuff in America where trans people weren't getting any health benefits. But you need to make sure that you're not eliminating people because they're LGBT. It's just because somebody doesn't have a body that produces children doesn't mean they don't need maternity benefits. Include LGBT people issues in publications. If you produce publications, think about LGBT or other factors. People. If you've got pictures on there, make it a mix of people that reflects the organisation that you're there. Often people don't do it. I thought that little video at the beginning of the Paul's talk was really great. People talking about yes, we're totally committed to that stuff. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, focus marketing and advertising on the LGBT community. Target into it. Sometimes you actually have to reach into a community because they're too scared to come out and talk. Trans people in particular think they won't get in, so they don't try. The Muslim community has the same problem. People in the Muslim community think, I won't be accepted, so I won't try. You need to get in there and say, yes you will, come on. Support local LGBT events. There are so many going on. This is Pride Week, the month. There's loads and loads of things. Trans Visibility Week, Idaho International Day Against Homophobia, AIDS Awareness on the 1st of December. These are all things which you can do little tiny bits for that don't cost a huge amount of money, a lot of time, but actually it's all about being inclusive and making the people who are LGBT think, okay, we've got allies here. We've got people in the organisation supporting and helping us in this. I'll just show you this one thing. Posters. This is a great poster you can get from the LGBT History Month thing. This is a great new PowerPoint. Look at that. Put that up in your canteen. If you've got a cafe area, putting up posters about these, about different cultures from Africa, from Asia, we've got people in the NHS from all over the world. So let's help people understand the world they come from. The more we understand, the more inclusive, the more a sense of belonging that we can create. So there we go. That's the really important rule. Treat everyone with dignity and respect, and I mean everyone. Doesn't mean we don't punish people for doing wrong, but we have to learn to treat everyone with dignity and respect. Thank you.